Like Purdue, it's just an example. Purdue losing to Fresno State is okay. We still win the Big Ten West. But me,
Billy Napier gets fired. I'm just kidding.
Really the best time of the year. I will be seated watching Red Zone for 7 hours on Sunday. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to an episode of Backyard Banter. Johnny, James, Tanner, we're continuing our MLB divisional predictions in this episode today. We got the NL East. The NL East has been dominated by the same team for the past 6 years. The Braves have won for the past 6 years. Won over 100 games last year. They've been just a complete juggernaut. But before we get to them, we're going to start at the bottom. So, Tanner, who you got at 5?
Yeah, in my 5, it really was down to 2 teams for me. I ultimately decided to go with the New York Mets at 5. Might be a little bit of a shocker to some, but I have them coming in at 70 and 94. They're second in MLB in payroll, and like half those guys are paying aren't even on their team. Mm-hmm. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is Kodai Senga is going to start the year on 60-day IL. He has a shoulder issue, the same shoulder issue that Corey Kluber had in the past. Not good. He was one of the best starting pitchers in the league last year as a rookie, and now he's got this injury. He's going to miss at least the first 2 months, probably more if we're being realistic. So just not good for the Mets to start off the year. Edwin Diaz, their closer, is going to be back. Yep. They've got some young guys. They have some pieces that were good a couple seasons ago but kind of fell off last year. Starlin Marte was hurt. Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo just didn't have the same type of year they had previously. So that's a problem. That's another problem for me. Harrison Bader, I like to pick up for them in center field. They still have Pete Alonso. They still have Francisco Lindor. Francisco Alvarez, young catcher. One of the best prospects in baseball. He needs to be better. I know he was a rookie last year, and rookies are going to struggle, but he's got to be better. And overall, I think they do have some talent, but there's too many question marks, some injuries early on, and I think part of my 70 and 94 prediction is I don't think Alonso's going to be there the second half of the year. I think they're going to get rid of him. So I got the Mets coming in at 5.
Yeah, I'll kind of get to my Mets take a little coming up. James and I have the same number 5. We have the Nats at 5. They overperformed last year. Yep. They had a really good August. They're 17 and 12 in August, really good August. And I'm kind of high on them. I almost put them at 3 when I was doing this. But then, kind of did a little bit more research and saw that they really kind of overperformed. And you look at this roster, and it doesn't really have anything spectacular that shows this team can be above 500. I listen to the Tony Kornheiser show a lot, and he's a huge Nats guy, and he talks about it every day on his podcast. So I know all of the, C.J. Abrams, all of them. Speaking of him, he was their big prize in the Juan Soto trade. Yeah. He needs to be better.
Of course.
He's a decent defender, but he struggled a lot last year as a hitter. He showed flashes. He got hot in certain moments, but Mackenzie Gore too is another one in that core. They have Lance Thomas, that's good too. He had a good year last year, but they play. Their coaches they play very hard for their manager. You can tell them that because their talent was really not there, but they still vastly overperformed last year. But again, with this roster, I just still think they're a few years away from being relevant again.
Yeah, I agree. Like Johnny said, I have the Nats at 5. It's an exciting group to watch, right? Because last year they were pretty exciting to watch because you were like, what product are they rolling out there? Because we are all baseball fans here, and when you're watching an MLB baseball game and you're like, who's that? It kind of catches a lot of us off guard. But the Nats are a team that they'll be back, right? They're going to be back, hopefully, right? And you don't like watching these teams put themselves in holes. Honestly, like the Cubs did for 100 years, right? Like never really gave themselves an opportunity. And in a new age of baseball, I don't think you're ever going to see something like that again. It's hard to win a World Series, but it's hard to be bad for a super long time. So I think the Nats this year, they're going to struggle a little bit, but these young guys are going to get some of these opportunities, and hopefully in a couple of years it will, propel them. But I also look at their starting pitching. When you have Patrick Corbin as like your guy,
who was the worst starting pitcher in baseball,
it struggles, right?
On a bad contract.
It's a tough deal for your starting pitching. It weighs heavy on your bullpen, and it's just not going to end well. So the Nats are going to be bad again this year, but they're an exciting group because they got a lot of young talent. We'll see a lot of those AAA, AA guys come up probably, but we'll see. You just never know in baseball. It's a long season.
And they got who's the LSU kid in the draft, the outfielder.
Oh, I know you're talking. Yeah.
Anyway,
I know who you're talking about.
The number they had the first pick, they got, or the second pick, they got
their guy.
No, they had the third pick.
Yeah,
because Skeens went 1 and the high school kid went 2.
Yep.
But so he might even be up this year.
Yep.
He hit over 400 in college. He was really good. Yeah, Patrick Corbin's the worst pitcher in baseball. But shout out to him. He went out there and made every start. He 8 innings for them.
It's incredible.
My number 4, I have the Marlins, and I almost want to put them at 5. I know Tanner's a little higher on the Marlins because of Tim Beckham, and he just signed there recently.
Tim Anderson.
Oh my God, Tim Beckham used to play for the Rays.
Yeah, I don't know who Tim Beckham is.
I was a huge Tim Beckham guy when he played for the Rays. Tim Anderson. But no Sandy Alcantara this year. It's a big deal. He's out for the year with Cy Young. And they have good pitching because they still have Jesus Luzardo, who booed. I definitely said his last name wrong. But he is another ace type of arm. That will be okay. But it's like, it very much reminds me of the Rays before they made the playoffs 6 straight years. They had good pitching, bad offense. I just don't think, hopefully Jazz can have a better year than last year, but it's very hard for Luis Arias to go hit 360 again. Before this year, no one really knew who he was.
Yeah.
And then they don't really have a lot of power bats in that lineup. You have Josh Bell, but it's like, when probably Josh Bell is your best power guy, that's probably not a team that's going to be in the playoffs. And I know they made the playoffs last year. They snuck in that last wild card, but then got waxed by the Phillies. But they're in that in between. We talk about all the time the mediocrity in sports. They're in that in between. I could see them winning 86 to 88 games and challenging for that spot. Now I could them selling at the deadline and winning 74 games. So that's where I am on the Marlins. We'll see. They have a very fancy stadium and they get less people than the Rays. So.
I personally didn't have a problem putting the Nationals at 5. I think that was my clear 5. It was Miami and the Mets here for 4 and 3. I have Miami at 4. I tell you what, Miami's a very far journey from here. But if I were to go to a stadium this year to watch a team, it's going to be this team because I feel like they're going to score a lot and give up a lot. So it's going to be exciting games to watch. But that just goes to the point. They don't have enough pitching for me to be consistent this year at all, and especially not in this division when you have some good solid teams that can make a run in the postseason. So I look at Miami, they have a ton. I mean, Josh Bell, they also got Jake Berger, right? They got Chisholm, like they got
still not
correct, but I'm saying the offense is good enough there. If they had some good rotational pieces, if they had Sandy, it's a different question. It's a different thing for me. They're by far the 3, but you don't, right? Sandy by far is one of the best pitchers in the league, and you lose him, and it hurts. So I have Miami as my 4 because of the fact that they don't have enough pitching, but they're going to put up a ton of runs. So maybe if they get some of their guys to just go out there and shove, then maybe they're going to win some games.
I don't even think they're going to put up a ton of runs.
I think they will. I
like their rotations.
I think they will offensively. I think Tim Anderson. I think Arias, who I don't know if I pronounce that right every time.
Yeah, but Arias is...
He's going to hit... Dude, he is a guy that will hit over 300 probably for the next 5 years because of the kind of approach that he takes.
But when you got Joey Wendell coming up after him, shout out Joey Wendell.
I don't know. I think Jazz takes a step forward. I think Arias is good enough to where he's going to hit over 300 again. Hopefully they get a good Tim Anderson. You never know with him.
Don't know.
I think this offense is good enough to put up some runs. I'm just not confident in their pitching, and Tanner sounds like he has a different take on that, but that's why I have Miami as my 4.
Yeah, well, my 4 is the Nationals, and you mentioned all their youth. They also signed Joey Gallo, big power bat.
Love that signing. He's home run or strikeout. There's no in between with him.
No in between with him, but I still like that signing for them. They got Josiah Gray, Mackenzie Gore in the rotation. Love those 2 pieces. My key for the Nationals here is Patrick Corbin. He's had a better year because they wanted to trade him last deadline,
no one's going
to
take that on.
because
no
of
one's going
his
to take it on.
contract. So he needs to have a better year so they can get something out of him. Marlins at 3. I got them finishing 77 and 85. I like the Tim Anderson signing because it's not really a risk in my eyes when it's 1 year, $5 million.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who could very easily break out. All he needs is a change of scenery, and he's back.
He was one of the best middle infielders in baseball.
Not
long ago.
Not long ago when the White Sox made the playoffs.
And if he doesn't perform and he's back to his old
lose
level,
$5 million.
You still have John Birdie, who had a good year last year. So I like the Marlins.
John Birdie, what a name!
I love their rotation. Even without O'Connor, they got Jesus Luzardo, they got Cabrera in there. Their bullpen was really good last year. I think they have enough arms to be competitive. I don't think they're gonna really push for a playoff spot. I could be wrong, but losing Jorge Soler sucks for them.
Yeah, he just signed with the Giants. I agree with you, Tanner. It's a big loss there. At 3, I have the Mets, simply because I think the core, you want to call it, with Alonso, Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, and then you still have Alvarez, as you mentioned. Kodai Senga is out for a while, and that really concerns me. But if they're close at the deadline, Steve Cohen's going to go all in. Yeah. He's one of the most aggressive owners in baseball. money doesn't matter to this guy. He's like Steve Ballmer of the Clippers. He just prints it. And that's the reason for me why it's like, yeah, I would like them to have another starting arm that's good. And pitching depth, I see with the Rays all the time. You need it. It's bound to happen in this day and age. There's going to be an injury to one of your top pitchers. To the Rays, we talked about last year, they had a whole rotation on the IL that could have been a top rotation. But I think the aggressiveness of Steve Cohen is kind of underrated here because with that extra wildcard spot that they added a few years ago, it's the same thing with the NBA plan. And it allows these teams to be a little more aggressive. So when you get to the middle of July, for example, and you're like, oh, we're 5 back of the second wild card. Like Lindor's having a bounce back year. He's a 5-WAR guy. You have Pete Alonso, who's probably over 40 home runs, one of the best power hitters in baseball. Do we go all in and get? I don't even know who's going to be tradable at that time. It could be anyone. But I also see the world where they lose 100 games because they don't have anyone in their rotation that could.
Because Jose Quintana, as of right now, is their ace.
Yeah, and that scares me. Yeah. But the thing is, it saves them here because last year with the new scheduling things that happen, you don't play your division as much. So you don't play the Phillies or Braves as much. And we saw with the AL East when that happens, you have 4 teams, all 5 teams better than the AL Central. Yeah. But yeah, that's my opinion on the Mets. They're a feast or famine for me. I think they're sneak in that last wild card or they lose almost 100 games.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't hate the Mets this season. I think I love, you mentioned it earlier, the Harrison Bader.
Yeah,
I think that's a big piece. He's a great glove out in center. Not a fantastic bat, but I mean we've seen him for the Cardinals. Pop. He's got some pop, right? Big, strong guy, fast guy. So I love that signing. They also, I believe, got Luis Severino, which when he was with the Yankees years back, he looked good.
Doesn't
right?
he have the last perfect game? Or
no, that was Domingo.
Getting my Yankees.
And these last couple of years with the Yankees, he struggled, right? Yeah. But I think maybe new scenery. He's in the same city, but new scenery, new stadium, whatever. I think, like you mentioned, the fact that Quintana is their ace right now, right? And that hurts. So maybe Severino steps up as that 3, maybe, and we'll see. I think the Mets have some potential, but like you said, the fact that they didn't go out there and pay for Pete Alonso makes me concerned that maybe they're not in on this year, right? But like you said, if they're around there, if they're 3-4 games back at the deadline, well, here goes $140 million, just like with the blink of an eye. So I think it's scary. If I was a Mets fan, I think Frank the Tank pointed it out the other day.
He's been on one.
The fact that they didn't sign Pete Alonso would be scary as a Mets fan because he is by far one of the best power hitters in the game, and you gotta pay a guy like that. So when you don't pay a guy like that, you're like, okay, what's next, right? So we'll see. I'd be interested to see if they do move him. What are they going to get for him? Even if he has a mediocre year, he's still going to hit 25 plus, no doubt, home runs.
A contender would go get him for a run.
Correct. So the question is, what did they get for him? And then that hopefully propels them. But like Tanner said earlier, they're paying guys that aren't even on the roster. And as Bears fans, we've seen that. As Cubs fans, we've seen that. As a Bulls fan, we all do this in sports, but the Mets put themselves in such a tough position last year. I could be wrong in my numbers. They spent over $400 million last year and didn't get anything in return. So I have the Mets at 3, just as a mediocre. I think the 2 teams below them are all the same. And I would go to the top 2 teams as we get to there. I look at these 3 teams, and for me, they're all the same thing. They don't have enough pitching. I think it's also because we're spoiled with the top 2 teams in this division because you have 2 teams with the Phillies and the Braves who have 2 of the top 5 rotations, one being the best rotation in baseball for me. So for me, it's lack of pitching. That's why I have the Mets at 3.
Yeah. And now getting into the top 2 teams, 2 juggernauts here. Even though they're both really good, I could see both winning the World Series. I think it's pretty clear to me who my division winner is. Yep. At number 2, I got the Phillies. Quiet off season, but they did what they needed to do. They re-signed Aaron Nola. And they brought in Whit Merrifield, which is a huge deal for them. He can play any position on the field, and he's a good bat. He gets on base, good base runner. He is a very good utility player that I think fits in very well with this roster. Other than that, it's the same Philly team, and I still think they're going to be very, very good. They probably win a couple other divisions in this league, but not this one. I have the Phillies winning 92 games, probably hosting a wild card series as a 4 seed. But there's just not much to say on the Phillies. It's the same team, same Phillies rolling out there.
It's the same core that they have. I was actually reading some Phillies blog posts of Philly fans, and they're mad they didn't go upgrade their bullpen. Their bullpen, they re-signed Jose Alvarado. It might have been last spring training or this year, but two guys associated with the Rays. They wanted Phil Maton from the Astros. He went to the Rays, and if the Rays are out getting you for someone in free agency, you're probably doing something wrong if you actually wanted that player. They wanted Robert Stevenson. Robert Stevenson was very good for the Rays last year, one of the top relievers in baseball. He went to the Angels for 3 years, and it's like, okay, you look at that bullpen, it's not the best. Jose Alvarado is so hit or miss out of the bullpen.
Yeah.
I saw it for years in Tampa. And he's been better with the Phillies. But it's just, it's the same core. It's the same. They're going to be in the same spot for the last 2 years that they're going to be in this year. But they could very well go and win this division because you look Trey Turner, Schwarber, Harper now first full time at first. But one of Schwarber or Castellanos is going to have to play in the field, and both of them are very negative fielders.
Yep.
But, I mean, we'll see. Those are a very first world problem for the Phillies. They'll be fine. They'll be in the playoffs. Big getting Nola back. They have Zach Wheeler. And, and when you get into the playoffs, you need a 1-2 like that.
Yep. I love the Phillies. I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about the Mets and lack of pitching. The Phillies have a top 5 rotation in baseball. And this team can win 100 games. Undoubtedly. There's not a world in my mind where I don't think this team can win 100 games. Bryce Harper, you mentioned, full-time player, everyday guy. I have him as my MVP. Whatever, we might get into that later in a couple pods, but I think Bryce Harper, who had a great year last year, I think he's going to come out and just absolutely kill it on all sides, right? Defensively, offensively. He is just so good. And a couple years ago, he was one of those guys that I hated watching, right? He just seemed like a tool bag, whatever. That's kind of gone away from me now, but Bryce Harper is an incredible guy to watch. They got Trey Turner, who's one of the best middle infielders in baseball. Kind of went on a power run last year, back in the World Series Baseball Classic or whatever, and then he goes out and hit 20-plus home runs last year. This Phillies team is so fun to watch. I wanted to put them at 1. I really did. But we'll get on to it. The Braves' starting rotation is the thing that's going to hold them back. And I read this on a blog post as well, I think, this morning. And it's the 1-2. It's the Phillies, the Braves. If this gets tight, it might not matter because the last time these two teams play each other is September 1st, right? So when you look at the scheduling, and this when scheduling comes into play, we've seen it for the Cubs' sake a ton, right? Say the the Brewers and the Cubs are up top. We've seen it a ton where, it's the last series of the year, right? We're going to Milwaukee. We have a chance to win the division up there. Well, for these two teams, their last time, they have a whole month to play.
Yeah.
So it might not matter, right? If the Phillies or if the Braves are 2 games up, it might be hard to come back from that because of the simple fact is they don't play each other again for a whole month. I have the Phillies at 2, but man, I want them to win this division. I want them to win. They are a fun group to watch. One of my favorite teams to watch besides the Cubs is this Phillies team. So I want them to win the division, but I think the Braves are too good, and I think they win the division. But that's not saying the Phillies aren't going to make a run in the postseason, but that's just why I have the Phillies at 2. But we'll see. You heard it here first. Bryce Harper is my MVP. But we'll see.
I have the Braves at 1. They added Chris Sale, which another one kind of like the Tim Anderson signing. Low risk, high reward for them. You guys see Spencer Strider's throwing a curveball in spring training?
Yeah, that's crazy.
That could be something.
Yeah.
This team's built for the regular season.
Yep.
When you look at their lineup, there is literally no weakness.
Nope.
It is insane. I'm going to just go catcher throughout.
Yep.
Goes Sean Murphy, really good.
Solid.
And his backup too.
Yeah, and Travis
Solid.
Darnell,
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah.
Matt Olson, probably one of the best players in baseball last year. I don't
Yep.
know if he can hit, did he hit 50 plus or at least 40 plus home runs?
He got the 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you have Albies. Again, one of the best second basemen. Switch hitter, has power.
Yeah.
You have Arcia, and if he's your one guy that's like, maybe that's a
fine.
pretty good
You're doing
problem
fine.
to have.
You're doing
You have
fine.
Riley, who's signed through 2033, who's been so solid for them. And you have Acuna. Acuna is probably one of the best players in baseball, one of the 5 best players in baseball.
Yep.
You have Harris, who just killed
Dog.
the Rays in spring training.
He's a
the
dog.
first game that they played. Then they have Kelnick.
Yep.
And it's like, where is the weakness?
Yeah. None.
You didn't mention Marcell Ozuna too.
Who's
Hit 40 home runs.
Yeah, exactly. And I just mentioned there are people that are be playing in the field, and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, how good is Chris Sale going to be? How many innings are you going to get out of him?
Yeah.
Is he going to be healthy in the playoffs? Because for the longest time they haven't had that second guy. I mean, who was the lefty last year that they had?
Usually it was Kyle Wright, Max Fried, or
Max Fried
Charlie
was
Morton.
their second guy. Charlie Morton, who's again great for the Rays. A lot of former Rays. Very, very.
Yeah,
old.
Max Fried will still be a big piece in this rotation.
Yeah, but it's just this core is not only the best in baseball; it is locked in for a while. Yeah. They're all under contract for the next 3 years at least. Yeah. Shout out to the Braves for doing all that. But again, this is almost like the Purdue basketball for baseball. Nothing matters in the regular season. Get in the playoffs. What can you do in the playoffs?
Yeah.
And this is a little different because they won a World Series a few years ago.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's back-to-back years they've won 100-plus games and haven't gotten it done against the Phillies in the playoffs.
Yeah, I this Braves team, I have them winning over 100 games, 102 to be exact. I like the bullpen moves they made. That's what I'm the most excited about. Because especially with the new rules where like you have to pitch for at least three batters. Left-handed pitching is even more of a premium now. And we used to see it before the rule. Like there'd be guys, left-hand pitchers that would come in, they would get one out, and they would get taken out, and they would be ready to go to the next night. Yeah. Now you have a left-handed pitcher. He throws at least three batters.
Unless it's the end of an inning.
Yeah, he can't do that every single night. He can't throw an inning every single night. So what the Braves did is they got left-handed pitching in their bullpen this offseason. They brought in Aaron Bummer. I like that move for them. Is he great? No, but it's another left-handed arm. Jared Kelenic, excited to see him because now not only is he a guy that can hit bombs, but he's got a good glove, a better glove than Marcell Ozuna. And Ozuna still almost hit 50 home runs last year and is now going to DH full-time. So there's just not a weakness on this roster, not even close to being one. If anything, if there's anything for me to like nitpick here, it would be losing Vaughn Grissom because Orlando Arcia, you mentioned him, he's like the one kind of like guy that you could, look at in their lineup. And I don't trust Orlando Arcia long term. Mm-hmm. I think he's better than Vaughn Grissom in the short term, but Vaughn Grissom's a really nice shortstop prospect that they got rid of, and I think maybe long term they could look back and be like, that kind of sucks. But no,
if you're nitpicking like that, you're really
exactly.
Yeah, you're really
you're in a good spot.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, that's our NL East prediction. Again, take it to the bank, 100% right.
Yep.
But Tanner, Cubs, Cody Bellinger, he's back. 3 years, $80 million. Has an opt out after every year, so it's essentially a 1 year deal if he performs well again this year. But yeah, go ahead and share your thoughts. What you've been telling us.
Yeah, well, I actually texted you guys a couple days ago, and I was like, the more this goes on, the more like I don't want Bellinger, because I thought all along we would overpay for him, and that's just the last thing the Cubs need right now when you have the farm system they have. And I love this deal because it's at the exact price range I figured that I would want him at, because I think it's reasonable for both sides. And then the fact that he has opt-outs, right? The Cubs, probably two of their best prospects are MLB ready. Like, one of them's probably going to start opening day at first in Bush, who we got from the Dodgers. And then the other one is Pete Crow Armstrong, who is like a top 10 prospect in baseball. So part of the reason I didn't want Bellinger is I didn't want him to block those two, because his two positions are center field, first base. But when you get him at this price, and it's a short-term deal, and you do kind of need him in the short term, I love this for the Cubs. They were already one of the favorites to win the division before it. Now I think they are the favorites. So we'll see. I mean, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's exciting. Tanner and I were talking because it was like a 1 a.m. move. Yeah. Like, it was a 1 a.m. signing, and it was, Saturday night, Friday night? Saturday night, I think.
I wasn't even here.
It was Saturday night, and I was just, checking on my phone, and I ended up texting Tanner. I'm like, we got Belly, and he's like, what? And then the notification came out, and Tanner and I were talking about it a little bit. I like the move a little bit. The money isn't a ton, right? It's 30, 30, 20. That's how it's breaking down for the contract. There's a ton of options, which is good or bad, right? You never know how that's going to work. My question with Belly, and it's going to be a question that whether he likes it or not, he's going to have to prove me wrong here. He won an MVP with the Dodgers and then hit 180. That's what he's done in his career. He's played very well and then very below average. I'm not saying he's going to do that this year, and I really hope not as a Cubs fan, but it's the concern for every fan. It's the concern for every Cubs fan. Are we going to have another, what was it, 2019 when he hit 180, or 2020 maybe?
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. Obviously, you're never going to deny and not be happy about signing a guy like Cody Bellinger. I will be interested to see how we use him. Are we going to put him at first? Are we going to put him in the DH spot? The thing is, I don't want him in the DH spot because I think you paid too much for a DH at that point. So,
and he's gold
glove caliber anywhere.
At both spots.
Anywhere, absolutely. So interested to see what they're going to do. Obviously, they know what they're going to do. But when I look at it, I'm not sure. Are you just going to have Bush just play in AAA or be a once-a-week kind of guy? Or are you going to, which you're not going to do, you're going to put PCA in center.
Yeah.
I don't see Belly ever playing in center. So we'll see. A lot of question marks for the Cubs. But, excited to see.
PCA needs to hit a baseball before he can
I think he's going to be fine. He's got so much confidence right now.
He had 12 at-bats last year.
I don't know. I was just,
he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine.
Yeah. Now we're gonna go into college basketball. Tanner, feed us your top 10.
10, I got Creighton.
I like it.
Coming off a loss, but coming off a big win.
Hate it.
So
I like it.
Because there's a better team.
Good luck finding the top 10 teams in the country right now.
There's a better team.
Who thinks a better team?
Auburn.
I'd take Creighton over Auburn. Auburn lost one of their best
I'm
players.
a big Blue Jay fan, and everyone knows it.
I'm a big Auburn
you can't
guy
lose
too.
to
But right now, Williams, their second best player, is out besides Broome. He's out for the foreseeable future.
But you can't lose to St. John's by 14. And
but the win over UConn
Yeah.
is better than the loss to St. John's.
But how much? But my concern is how much did they climb in your rankings?
Creighton?
Yeah.
I mean, they were probably 11 or 12 last week.
Right.
And you get from like 15
I agree.
to like 8.
Truthfully, you get from 4 to 15.
Yeah.
I think there's like a tier 1 and then there's a tier 2. Tier 3 for me is what's tough.
Question mark. Okay.
Because I don't even really like
Yeah.
this team that I have at 9, and it's North Carolina.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Hit or miss.
hit or miss with them. I mean, the ACC sucks. I'm sorry.
So
Like, it's
bad.
bad.
It's so
really
bad.
bad. 8, I got Iowa State. I do love this team. I think they're in my tier 2.
I like Iowa State too because we talked about it with Bama, and I'm not going to say I was 100% right about Bama, but I was 100% right about Bama. They don't guard a soul. And when you let up 100, when you score 94 points and lose by more than 20,
It's impressive.
It's
impressive.
I guess impressive is the word.
impressive.
It's insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting to say the least.
Yeah. I like the Cyclones, man.
I do too.
They're legit.
Because they guard.
They can beat anybody in March.
And their coach, and I always forget his name.
Hoiberg. He's with Nebraska now.
No.
Tripping.
I don't know. He's a younger guy.
Yeah.
He fires me up. Like every time I watch Iowa State,
I agree
he
with
fires
that.
me up. He's like this little younger guy. He's just jacked, and I'm like, that guy just he's like a friend. Like he's one of those coaches who probably runs him a ton, but probably is like dabs him up after practice. Like just seems like a cool guy, and they just fire me up.
Number 7, I got Arizona. Might be a little bit shocking. Might be a little bit biased too. I don't want Arizona to get a 1 seed as a Purdue fan because that means we would have a 2 seed in our region that we've already played or beat in Marquette/Tennessee.
Yep.
I don't want any part of that. I'm hoping Arizona falls down to 2.
I think Tennessee deserves to be a 1.
I think
don't
so
know if
too.
That's just me.
I think so too.
Dalton Knecht is a first-team All-American and the best player in the SEC. He's going to be Player of the Year, averaging 24 points a game in conference. I know they're higher up on your list, but yeah, Arizona, I don't know. It's the Caleb Love show, and they go how he goes.
Yeah.
But, bad loss to Washington State.
I watched it.
Yeah.
And this is what I told myself. I said, I can't tell if Arizona's playing very poorly or if Washington State
Washington
is for
State
real.
went and lost to Arizona State.
That's the other thing. And that's what happened this week, right? And you look even back to Creighton, right? Big wins by these teams, and they just go and drop one.
Yeah.
It's like one of those, they call it like trap games, right? But it's reverse, right? And Arizona, man, they're a team that, like you said with Purdue, nobody matches well against Purdue because they have Zach Edey. But if I could pick a team, Arizona's one of them that might do well against Purdue. So
Well, they played already.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying that was earlier and whatever.
Malo has gotten a lot better since Purdue and Arizona
Absolutely.
played their big man.
I like Arizona, but just tough loss.
Yeah,
But
I don't know.
just can't happen.
I feel like that
not
can't
in the
happen.
Pac-12.
Not in the
just
Pac-12.
Not. It's like those ACC
Especially
losses
at home. If you
and
want
the
to go on the
Pac-12
road,
losses.
if you want to go on the road and lose one's fine. At home,
can't
gotta
happen.
take care of business.
Can't happen.
At 6, I got Kansas. They're getting healthier and they're getting better. They're starting to play pretty well.
Yep.
They're gradually getting better and better.
Yeah, they're fine.
So I think Kansas might be fine.
They're only a game back in the Big 12, and with how bad they've been playing, to think they're only a game back in one of the best conferences in basketball, it's impressive. And you can't just because they're Kansas, you can't knock them, right?
Yeah.
They're what? They've lost 6 games this season. Okay, right? And it seems like they maybe lost 10 or more because of how poor they've been playing. But this Kansas team can win some games, so I like where they're at in 6.
At 5, I got Marquette. still believer in this team. Concerned about the Tyler Kolek big game allegations because he just doesn't.
Doesn't matter because they got Cam Jones who's scoring 30 a night now.
He's playing really well for them. Marquette always from preseason on, he knew they always were going to be there.
Yeah.
This is a team that can beat anybody. Yeah. Especially when you have the guard play they have.
Yeah.
So, very high Marquette still. 4, I got Tennessee.
God, they guard. They guard, and they finally have a guy that can take them to a Final Four. They have an offense good enough to be in the Final Four, and I don't care what happens unless there's a major injury to Tennessee. Tennessee, kind of regardless of what bracket they're in, will be in my Final Four. That's how I am on Tennessee.
I like that.
I like that take.
Yeah.
I think
because they match up well against everybody.
There's a very good chance they'll be in my Final Four.
Like, they match up well because of the fact that it's not one of these teams that doesn't guard. They guard.
Tennessee has never made a Final Four. Rick Barnes hasn't been there in over 20 years. This is the team.
Yeah.
Trust me, they go and dismantle teams.
Yeah.
They went on the road and dismantled a good Kentucky team. Texas A&M has the most quad one wins in the SEC. Will beat you by 35.
Yeah.
They killed a good Florida team on the road. Like, yes, you drop games in the SEC. It's a tough conference, but I would take them almost over anyone in the country.
Well,
I like that.
The 3 teams ahead of them. This is my tier 1. It is for sure that these 3 teams make up the tier 1. I don't know who to put at 1, 2, or 3. So this week I have a number 1 next to all 3 of them, and I'm going to let you guys decide my top 3 this week.
I think I'd go with Houston just because people have lost around them, and they went. And I said on the podcast, I think that they're going to get that big-time Big 12 road win against Baylor. And they should have done it in regulation. They didn't. Took care of it in overtime. They just guard. They're so well coached. And, Purdue, UConn, they're all going to be a 1 seed in March. It doesn't particularly matter. But I still love all 3 of those teams. Purdue scares me the most out of those teams. Actually, Houston does too because of Houston's ability to go on droughts on offense. But Purdue just still scares me that they don't. It's just,
I don't know. I have Houston at 1 for sure. I had him at 1 last week. No way I can move him after getting that big win against Baylor.
2 big wins.
Yeah, no doubt. So and I know Tanner wasn't super confident in him, but I'm telling you, I've said it before. Their defense is always going to be there, but their offense this year is nothing special. But it's underrated, man. They can go and score. They've got some dudes that can score. Very impressive with their guard play right now. And then the fact is they can just guard. So I love Houston. But now I look at Purdue and UConn, and I'm like, who do I put at 2? Who do I put at 3? This week, you look at the AP poll, then you look at the coaches poll. They're different, right? Well, I think the coaches poll has Purdue at 3, and I think the AP poll has Purdue at 2. And I don't know which one I agree with because Purdue is too good to be a 3. But UConn's too good to be a 3.
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, these top 3 teams are by far, they have the same record. They have similar-ish, difficulty in their preseason or their regular season before conference play. I don't know. My gut is telling me to put Purdue at 3 because of how good UConn is, because I have Houston at 1. But again, Purdue is just super good. But I don't know, man. I'm going to put Purdue at 3.
Out of all those teams, though, I'm more confident in UConn making the Final Four.
That's
I'm
the
most confident in UConn.
I'm the least confident in UConn. You want to know why?
Tell us.
The
defending
national
champ has
failed to
out
make
of
a
the
Sweet
first
16.
Yeah. We'll see. They'll break the streak.
Yeah, as a Purdue fan, just real quick, my one concern with this team right now is defensive end of the floor.
Yep.
Something that hasn't been an issue until as of late, and it's really getting on my nerves, I got to tell you.
It has. He's been telling me.
I've said it multiple times.
Like, man, we're winning, but we're not playing good. I'm like,
I don't like how Purdue is defending right now. The other night, they played Rutgers, and Purdue put up 100 basically on the second best defensive team in the country. I walked away from that game pretty frustrated because we gave up 70 to a team that is like in the 300s offensively. So I'm just not happy with the way they played defense. I don't know if it's just long regular season or I don't know what it is.
Looking ahead.
But I don't know. We'll see.
It still comes down to the simple fact is that when you have Fletcher Lawyer in your starting lineup, it's going to be a concern. Like, no matter what, because sure, he can go drop 20 any given night, but can he? Like, we've seen him do it. Right, but the inconsistency with Fletcher Lawyer, I don't know what he brings to the table.
I agree.
There's something that Matt Painter and he jokes about it all the time.
We can't say it on the pod.
Can't say what his jokes are, but Matt Painter and Fletcher Lawyer, there must be some good chemistry there. Like, they must
has to be
like good Fletcher Lawyer must be like shooting the lights out in practice or whatever. I don't see a way for Fletcher Lawyer to continue to start for this team with how good this team can be. And truthfully, the 1-2 guard with Braden Smith and Lance Jones now, which it was Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, I don't see they have 4 guys out there every time. When Fletcher Lawyer is on the court, they're playing darn near 5v4. So luckily Zach it's a good name. Zach Edey kind of takes up maybe 2 or 3 guys, but Fletcher Lawyer is always going to be the concern for me. It was last year, and it definitely is this year.
He's a concern for me as well, and I complain about it every time I watch him play. And at the end of the day, they show his stats, and he's like shooting like 42% from 3, and you're like, I'm shocked.
I don't know. I don't know how.
Get it. But some just final take here on Purdue. Interesting take that I saw on Twitter might be right. So last year, Purdue's guards Fletcher and Braden Smith kind of wore down as freshmen when the season went on. Over the last month or two, people have been complaining because 2 Purdue freshmen, Cam Heide and Miles Colvin, have not been playing. Mm-hmm. And as of recently, they've started playing more and more, and they've played really well. And so
Heide played really well.
Someone's take is like maybe Painter didn't play him as much so that like they don't wear down and have that freshman wear down, because we're going to need those guys in the tournament, and they're playing the best basketball of their career right now.
And I don't remember what game Heide played well in. Maybe he played well in both. It was the Rutgers game. He played 18. Yeah, he played really well against Rutgers. So, yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. Plenty of college basketball to come. A lot of NBA on the next episode coming up, too. But if you guys made it this far, thank you guys so much for watching. Keep checking us out on our socials. We're posting a new grid that'll be out. A new grid will be out on TikTok and YouTube. But again, if you guys made it this far, like, subscribe, send to someone, and we'll see you guys later.
See ya.
Peace.